In 1965, a 30-year-old college dropout with no chemistry degree converted his bathroom in Berkeley, California, into a pharmaceutical laboratory. He taught himself organic synthesis from textbooks. He sourced precursor chemicals through legitimate channels. He applied the same obsessive precision to his work that any serious research scientist would apply to theirs. Over the next 2 years, he produced an estimated 5 million doses of LSD, not street acid, not cut with unknown compounds, pharmaceutical grade, precisely dosed, chemically pure in a way that the legal pharmaceutical industry rarely achieved. He simultaneously became the sound engineer and financial backer of the most important American rock band of the 20th century, and invented a concert audio system that was 30 years ahead of anything the commercial industry produced. In 1970, the U.S. government made his chemistry illegal, classified the substance he was synthesizing as Schedule I, alongside heroin, with no accepted medical use and no potential for therapeutic application. In 2025, Johns Hopkins Medicine published findings showing psilocybin, a structurally related compound operating on the same receptor system, produced a 71% response rate in patients with major depressive disorder. MAPS completed Phase 3 clinical trials showing MDMA-assisted therapy was statistically superior to every existing PTSD treatment. The therapeutic framework Owsley operated from 60 years ago, that these compounds, administered carefully, at the right dose, in the right setting, could produce genuine healing, has been validated in peer-reviewed journals by some of the most respected medical institutions in the world. Here is what Augustus Owsley Stanley III actually built, and what it cost to bury it. Owsley Stanley came from Kentucky aristocracy. His grandfather had been a U.S. senator, his father a government lawyer. He was expected to follow the family into professional respectability. He dropped out of the University of Virginia after 1 semester, drifted to California, enrolled briefly at UC Berkeley as an engineering student, long enough to access the university's chemistry library and understand what he was looking at. What he was looking at was LSD. Albert Hofmann had synthesized lysergic acid diethylamide at Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland in 1938. By the early 1960s, Sandoz was the only legal source in the world. The CIA had been running covert LSD experiments since 1953 under MK-Ultra, testing it on unwitting subjects, prisoners, mental patients, trying to understand if it could be weaponized as a mind control agent. Owsley's interest was the opposite of the CIA's. He had taken LSD recreationally and believed he had encountered something that had genuine therapeutic and consciousness-expanding potential. He wanted to understand it. Then he wanted to make it. He found a laboratory technician who taught him the synthesis process. He converted his bathroom in Berkeley into a production facility. He sourced the precursor chemical lysergic acid through a chemical supply company in Los Angeles, legally, because it wasn't yet controlled. His first batch, March 1965. His standard, pharmaceutical purity. Every batch tested. Every dose precisely measured. He kept meticulous records of synthesis parameters, temperature, reaction times, crystallization procedures, with the rigor of a licensed laboratory. He had no chemistry degree. His product was better than most of what pharmaceutical companies produced. Between 1965 and 1967, Owsley produced approximately 500 grams of LSD. At his standard dose of 270 micrograms per tablet, that translates to just under 5 million doses. For context, at that time, the entire legitimate global supply of LSD came from one Swiss pharmaceutical company. Owsley, working out of a series of rented facilities in California, matched or exceeded that supply single-handedly. He distributed it for free or near cost, not to maximize profit but to maximize reach. He believed the experience was important. He wanted as many people as possible to have access to the real thing, rather than the adulterated, inconsistently dosed product beginning to appear on the street market. His products became legendary by name: Purple Haze, White Lightning, Blue Cheer, the latter so potent it was often described as hitting users like a physical force. The rock band Blue Cheer named themselves after it. But Owsley's philosophy wasn't recreational. He documented his own experiences with clinical precision. He corresponded with researchers. He believed he was working in parallel with the legitimate scientific community, that the difference between his laboratory and a licensed pharmaceutical facility was paperwork, not methodology. He was not entirely wrong. He made 5 million doses of a compound that Johns Hopkins just proved treats depression better than any existing drug. Nixon made it illegal in 1970. Here's the part that should make you angry. Subscribe. Tech They Buried goes this deep every single week. While producing 5 million doses of LSD, Owsley was also doing something else. He became the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, a band he had been financing with drug money since their earliest days in San Francisco. He moved in with them, toured with them, and became obsessed with a problem that nobody in the concert industry had solved. In large venues, the sound reaching the front row was completely different from the sound reaching the back. Early arrivals got a perfect mix. Everyone else got delay distortion and phase cancellation, as sound from different speakers arrived at different times. Owsley's solution was the wall of sound. Built in 1974, the wall of sound comprised 604 speakers and 89 amplifiers, producing 26,400 watts of continuous power, at a time when most stadium concerts ran on a fraction of that. The system was engineered so that each instrument and vocal had its own dedicated speaker column. No mixing of signals in the air, no delay artifacts. Every person in the audience heard the same mix simultaneously. It required a crew of 21 people to operate. It weighed 75 tons. It required 2 sets, one traveling ahead by truck to be assembled at the next venue while the other was being played. Modern concert sound reinforcement, the line array systems, the digital delay networks, the dedicated subwoofer stacks, traces its engineering lineage directly to what Owsley built for the Dead between tours in 1973. He invented modern concert sound as a side project. By the late 1960s, LSD had escaped from the laboratory into the broader culture. Timothy Leary was on television. The Haight-Ashbury scene was global news. The anti-war movement was using psychedelics as both sacrament and symbol. The research that had been accumulating since the 1950s was genuinely promising. Studies at Spring Grove Hospital in Maryland documented LSD-assisted therapy, producing dramatic reductions in anxiety and depression in terminal cancer patients. Alcoholism research showed psychedelic-assisted therapy outperforming every existing treatment. PTSD work, with veterans from Korea and early Vietnam, was showing results that conventional psychiatry couldn't match. In 1970, Richard Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act. LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and MDMA were classified Schedule I, no accepted medical use, and no therapeutic application. Research programs were shut down. Existing data was archived or destroyed. Scientists working in the field had their careers ended. John Ehrlichman, Nixon's domestic policy advisor, confirmed in a 1994 interview what researchers had long suspected. The war on drugs was not a public health policy. It was a political weapon, designed to target the anti-war left and the black community by criminalizing the substances associated with them. The therapeutic research wasn't buried because it didn't work. It was buried because of who was using it. Owsley was arrested in 1967. Arrested again in 1970. Served time, got out. He never recanted, never apologized. Spent the rest of his life in Australia, where he became a citizen in 1996, working as a silversmith and audio engineer, and remained until his death in 2011, the most articulate defender of the position that what he made was medicine. In 2025, Johns Hopkins published findings showing psilocybin, operating on the same serotonin receptor system as LSD, produced a 71% response rate in major depression. Half of patients entered full remission. MAPS completed Phase 3 trials showing MDMA-assisted therapy was the most effective PTSD treatment ever documented in clinical research. The DEA still classifies psilocybin as Schedule I, no accepted medical use. Same category as heroin. Despite the Johns Hopkins data, despite the NYU data, despite MAPS, despite 25 years of peer-reviewed clinical research, published in Nature Medicine and JAMA, and the New England Journal of Medicine. Owsley Stanley, a self-taught chemist with no degree, working out of a bathroom in Berkeley, understood what these compounds could do in 1965. The institutions that shut it down are now publishing papers confirming he was right. And the Schedule I classification that ended 20 years of promising research and cost generations of patients access to a potentially transformative therapy is still in place. Drop a comment. Do you think psychedelic therapy will ever be fully legal? Because the gap between what the clinical data says and what the law says is one of the most consequential contradictions in modern medicine. Next week on Tech They Buried, Thomas Townsend Brown. In the 1950s, he demonstrated that high-voltage capacitors produce thrust with no moving parts. The Air Force funded his research, classified it in 1954. It vanished from public science. The B-2 bomber is theorized to use the same principle. Here's what Brown actually proved, and where the technology went. Subscribe. I'll see you there.